This episode is brought to you by Redfin. You're listening to a podcast, which means you're probably multitasking. Maybe even scrolling home listings on Redfin, saving homes without expecting to get them. But Redfin isn't just built for endless browsing. It's built to help you find and own a home. With agents who close twice as many deals, when you find the one, you've got a real shot at getting it. Get started at redfin.com. Own the dream.
Maryland sports fans, there's only one sports book in the great state of Maryland with over 50 years experience booking bets and supporting customers. Betfred Sportsbook at Longshots is now open and is the only sports book in Frederick offering cash betting on football, basketball, world soccer, and more. Visit the Betfred Sportsbook at I-270 and MD-85 in Frederick, right next to Longshots off-track betting. Go to betfredsports.com for more information and your chance to win exclusive merchandise. Must be 21 or older. Play responsibly. For help, call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Good afternoon, everybody. It is Jay Scott. This is The Hook Rocks. Welcome back. Welcome back to another episode. Hope everybody's staying safe, staying healthy. I know things are kind of crazy out there, but we're here for you, talking music to try to give you a little bit of an escape from what is reality right now. And I'd like to welcome in our next guest. It's from a band that I am really excited about. Big fan of their EP, Place and Time, that was released last year. Their new single, which was out about a month ago, a little bit maybe longer than that. But I'd like to welcome in guitar player from Joyous Wolf, Blake Allard. How are you doing, man?
Hey, Jay, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on. I really do appreciate it. I am a huge fan of you guys. I love your new song, Odyssey. Love the EP that came out last year. Big things, I think, are on the horizon for you guys. I know I interviewed Nick last fall, and I'm glad to have you on here as well.
Oh, thanks, man. That means a lot. I appreciate it. Well, I'm happy to be here also.
So how are you guys doing?
Good. I think, in other cases with the different bands that are kind of in a similar position as us, it's obviously very hard not being able to, make our living and do what we're supposed to do and play shows live. But kind of at the other end of the spectrum, we have all of this free time to be able to really sit down and kind of focus on probably the most important part of our band, and that's songwriting. And so we kind of all like right now have somewhat of like an excuse, I guess, if you want to call it that, to kind of be able to all sit down and just go through separate bodies of work during this time. So we're trying to find the positive in it.
Yeah, you got to find a silver lining. I'm a big believer in out of something bad, something good always happens. And
100%.
Yeah, and if that good means more material for you guys to tour on and more material for your fans, that's a good thing. I know some people do have difficulty being inspired or writing music during this time because it can be very monotonous and there's really not much to do. I understand that perspective as well, but it's good to hear that, you guys are pushing through and writing new material, because that's exciting, being a fan of your band, and, to hear more music.
Yeah, thanks, man. I definitely like to hear some more too. So it'd be nice for us to get a jump start on that. And, we're definitely not immune to the monotony also. We definitely feel it, but we still have some options in the area that we're in to try and break off and do some things that we can. So we're trying to find some different avenues of inspiration, definitely, at this moment, I think.
You know, I had a conversation with George Lynch last week, and he was talking about playing Sturgis a couple weeks ago.
Oh, okay.
And he talked about the differences in terms of, being around people backstage and, restricting himself to he did a huge camping trip. He kind of incorporated that into his whole Sturgis show. So he came in a camper, and he was like, it was only me, and my tech, and it was just, I stayed in my camper until it was showtime. I didn't socialize with people like I normally do. He's like, so, there's a lot of, differences into how he approached that show versus what he did before COVID hit.
True. Yeah. Very, very true. With the kind of industry that we're in, it's kind of interesting to hear how things have changed or how people are trying to do the same thing, but adapting to it, So if people like him can continue to do that in a somewhat positive way, I mean, obviously, like you said, he's still doing it, so that's a good thing. But it's definitely just staying positive and trying to find the right way to do things at this time, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll get into more of that as we talk here, but I'd like to go into what our normal first question is to anytime we have a first-time guest. I know I asked you a couple questions prior to this, but it's the essence of the show, which is the hook rocks. It's just like every rock song has a hook that sucks you in. Every rock fan has a moment, whether it's a song, an album, a band, or a performance that hooked them on rock and roll. What was it for you?
Oh man, like my first one, or just a memorable one?
Well, what hooked you on rock? What made you a rock fan?
To be honest, that's kind of a weird question, because when this whole band of ours started, I had just came from basically playing like death metal, and I had gotten pretty sick of it, to be honest with you. And I had just met this singer who I later knew as Nick, and that was one of the first questions that I asked him when he was first trying to form a band. Like, my first question was, what kind of music is it going to be? And he was like, I have no idea. And so I was like, okay, like, I'm down for anything. Like, it could be alternative pop music. It could be like hard rock music. Like, I'd be up for anything. And then I think kind of the discussion came about where we all, the three of us at the time, kind of sat down and we were like, what music do we all agree on, or kind of like bond over? And I think some of the most memorable ones were definitely like Audio Slave, AC/DC. Nick and I bonded over a lot of old blues stuff at the time, like B.B. King and Cream and Muddy Waters. A lot of influences from our dads on that one. But for me personally, the two albums that kind of linger in my head always and forever will be Back in Black by AC/DC and the Guns N' Roses Greatest Hits album. Those were the two albums that I had when I was a kid, before I even knew what rock music was. And so kind of hearing that for the first time was my first exposure to rock music. And I just listened to them over and over and over again. It was like the kind of music and the kind of songs, because they were so good, that never got boring for me. And that's always the kind of impact that I've wanted to have as a band personally. Like, I really wanted to have a great energy and perception as a band while also having like the powerful songs behind it. So I would definitely say those two albums have still had a big influence on me.
When we talk about your progression into music, you play guitar for Joyous Wolf. You're the lead guitar player. Who was it that made you want to pick up the guitar and play?
Well, first off, it was my dad, because I have really no foundation of musical background until he started teaching me a few things on guitar when I was about 13. And then kind of just started from there. And then I just got addicted to learning stuff on YouTube, and it kind of became second nature, or like an addiction for me to try and learn as much as I could, or anything that I didn't know, I wanted to know. So I had the ability to use it or not use it kind of at my will. So I think it was definitely kind of something that I became obsessed with as a teenager. Definitely.
Was there a particular guitar player that, you really were influenced by or you gravitated to?
Oh yeah. At the time, Slash was a huge influence. Not only iconically, just, he's the most iconic guitar player in rock music, but he was definitely a player where when I listened to his songs and to his band's work, I was always remembering the guitar parts, and I was always being able to hum the melodies of his solos, even to this day. I didn't know who Angus Young was at the time, but the same thing kind of went for him. Like, he had this very almost like fluid kind of train of thought in his solos, where and Hendrix kind of has this too a lot. If you listen to a lot of the live stuff that he does, where everything that he plays, it just sounds so natural and fluid, and it doesn't sound like he's copying and pasting anything. He just expresses what he feels, and I've always kind of resonated with that kind of expression. So definitely, I would say those two at first. When I first started playing guitar, it would have been those that inspired me the most.
I, grew up listening to Slash, and Slash is, like you said, being able to hum his melody of his solos, like someone could actually sing or put lyrics to that melody. Very similar to like a Joe Walsh, who does the same thing, makes the guitar sing, and it's a very unique way of playing. And I always love that style.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's definitely a new level of musicianship and guitar playing when you have that kind of ability to sometimes be bigger than your instrument. You focus so much on the music that the instrument just becomes a vessel, and what people really remember is the music and not your guitar playing. So it's a pretty crazy thing to be able to do.
When was the moment you wanted to be in a band and play on stage?
It's a good question. I remember when my dad was first influencing me with all of the kind of blues rock music, and I remember I think I was like 1 month into learning guitar, so I was just absolutely terrible. But I got to sit in on a jam session with my dad, my uncle, and my family's really good friend who played drums at the time, and they were all incredible musicians, just like extremely well veteraned and like very tight. And I got to sit in with them for a jam session, and they just let me basically solo and play a couple rhythm parts. But it was the first time that I ever like locked in as a band, and I had that experience with them. So that was super important to me. But actually, come to think of it, before that, I did my 8th grade talent show, funny enough, and I actually did 2 Avenged Sevenfold cover songs for it, because I was super into them at the time. And just hearing the crowd reaction from the simplicity of just me doing that emulated somewhat of like a live experience for me. So I would definitely say it was that grade school or middle school experience that kind of addicted me for the rest of my life, and still has to this day. It's only gotten worse.
Well, no, everybody has their different path, and I'm always curious to know, how the progression, the evolution of the artist. When does rock and roll hit you? When does music hit you? When does playing an instrument become part of that path? And then when does wanting to be in a band and perform for people be part of that journey? And it's always interesting because everybody has, of course, a different answer. And it's just great to hear people's different perspective and where they come from and how they were influenced. When you think about your path in music, you mentioned you were in a death metal band prior to Joyous Wolf. How did that come about?
That's a really good question, honestly, because I have no idea how that happened. I knew that just at the time, because like I told you before, the first pieces of music that I really listened to were I mean, for rock music, I had those, but my mom had some old CDs from like the 2000s, like of Slipknot and Linkin Park. So like that might have played a little bit of an influence on it. I was also super into the video game Guitar Hero, and I kind of picked from their catalog some stuff. And I know that some of the stuff on there was pretty heavy at times, but I mean, your guess is as good as mine. I can barely remember.
Was it just like, hey, was this your first band that you were in, or was it, just something to do at that point?
No, it was definitely the first band I was in. I knew an incredible couple of musicians who were jazz musicians at my school, a bassist and a drummer. And I guess I was just expressing how I felt at the time. I've always had the need to express some sort of intense emotions, even today with rock music. But I guess it just manifested itself a little bit differently for me in high school. And the people I was around kind of shared the same influence or shared the same idea at the time, I guess.
Whenever I tell people about Joyous Wolf, one of the things I always tell them is this is a band that's able to fuse 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s music seamlessly together and make it sound modern. Very impressed with the Place and Time EP. Love the new song Odyssey. How does, all of your influence, how are you able to, put it all together? I know Nick talked about being influenced by like James Brown and, a lot of blues artists back, from back in the day. And then you bring your influences in. It's got to be pretty interesting how that develops and how you guys create your own sound.
Yeah, it really is. It's actually probably one of my favorite parts of this band is because we all have our own different influences. We all share probably, I would say, like the core of root influences, but there's definitely some where we break away. And that was a really interesting thing to be exposed to on tour, because when you're on tour and like, let's say you're the one driving, like you're going to be listening to the driver's music. So you're basically exposed to that for however many hours. And we all got exposed to each other's music, and we like got addicted to each other's musical influences because we're all pretty similar people. And so we can kind of see each other's point of view or perspective on things, especially when music is involved. So when we're involved to like other art for the first time, it's just like starts that addiction process over again. Like we all love, like you said, music from the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. So it's a compliment that you say we're able to, have that same emotion as those decades were able to, because it's a very important thing for us, because we feel very special every time we listen to certain music from any of those decades. And we just want to have the same kind of excitement and energy as those did, definitely.
I know one of your goals as a band, or your expectations as a band, is to keep growing and to keep evolving, keep stretching yourself in that creative process. When you hear Place and Time, you hear those songs. I mean, obviously there was the Mississippi Queen cover prior to that, and some other songs, from a different session prior to that EP coming out. Now you have the new song Odyssey. How do you feel about the evolution of the band? Because you can hear it as a fan. When I heard the new song, I can totally see the growth of the band. What was the new process of recording like versus what you guys did with the EP?
Well, to talk about that process just for a second, like we have it made right now, 100%. We are probably an insanely lucky band as far as our process is able to go for recording, because we are able to do it the way that we've always dreamt of doing it since we formed and started a band. The way that Odyssey was recorded was it was recorded as a live band. It was recorded to tape. It was recorded with all real instruments, no samples, anything like that. I feel like we got to hear ourselves for the first time, and at least in my opinion, I don't know how other people may perceive it. I hope they can. But when I hear Odyssey, there's definitely like another level of excitement that just talking about that, I think we achieved in that song for sure. It was different doing something like Odyssey, and I'm glad we did it. We'll definitely do more things that are similar, more things that are a little bit different in the future. But as far as the process goes behind it, it was like a dream come true. And because we're working with our new producer, Jay Rustin, he just feels like a fifth member of the band, the way that he, as cheesy as that is to say, just the way that he understands us kind of subconsciously, because we like the same music and we like his process, the way that he produces and the ideas that he has and all that kind of stuff. So we're extremely, extremely blessed in this moment. So I think going forward, it's only going to get better, which is a really inspiring thing to be an artist, to be able to say that.
During that session, when you recorded Odyssey, was there any other material that was recorded?
There was, yeah. There was another song that's going to be released in the near future called Get Religion. That's going to be another single that comes out to be announced. And I'm very excited about that song also, because it was recorded the same exact way, with the same exact processes, arguably more high energy than Odyssey was. But I like both of them very much so, and I hope that the rest of our fans do too.
You know, when you talk about these songs that you recorded during this session, what's going on with recording new music? I know there was a plan to do a new album, have a new album by the end of this year, maybe early part of next year. What is the timeline for a new Joyous Wolf album?
Well, we definitely have plans of new EPs to surface within the next coming months. As far as a full-length record is concerned, I think we really want to take our time with that and make sure that everything that we write is very well thought out and sort of like a theme, as you a lot of the times feel with most albums. So I think at this point, there doesn't seem to be a huge rush to do that, just from our point of view, because like I said, we want to take our time. But we'll see. It's definitely possible in the somewhat near future. But as it stands right now, we're kind of still growing as a band. We're still very new, and we definitely want to experiment and kind of get things out there at the same time too.
Yeah, it's interesting. Obviously, with the current reality that we're living through right now, I've talked to other bands too as well, and there's just everything's been delayed this year for the most part. A lot of bands that were planning on putting out material have pushed everything back to 2021.
Mm-hmm.
People, instead of releasing their debut album, bands are saying, okay, let's just take 4 songs from that album and just release an EP, because no one knows when they're going to be able to hit the stage consistently again. And of course, when you release an album or a new EP, you want to tour on it. And
exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
And obviously the current circumstances make it difficult for that to happen. So that plays into it as well.
It absolutely does. That is a huge part of it. And also, depending on what kind of band you are, it can definitely affect your budget, because a lot of bands don't have a ton of income. And so a larger body of work obviously takes longer to record, with more studio time and more overdubs and all that kind of stuff just stacks up with a 10 to 12 track album. So it could just depend on any band situation.
When I think of the current environment, like I was saying, one of the things that has to happen in the future is bands and musicians and artists have to adapt to what may be the new normal. Have you guys given any thought to that? Is that something that you guys discuss?
No, definitely not. I wouldn't say, I mean, to say that there is a new normal is a little premature. I don't really think that's fair to say, because right now everybody is adapting. That's kind of really something everybody can agree on is, all of the previous processes of things that were done a certain way are being adapted now. I mean, just because something's happening for a while doesn't mean that it's a new norm. It's still based on perspective. And the way that we look at it is this is still just temporary.
As far as, the momentum that you guys were having, prior to all this happening, I mean, you guys went on tour with Deep Purple, you toured with Buck Cherry, you were playing, all over the place, and people were really connecting with you. Crowds were loving your live performances and what you guys were doing. In terms of, like I said, that momentum, putting that on pause, has there been, a plan in place? Is there a plan in place for Joyous Wolf that once things are open again, is it going to be back to what we were doing, or is there things that you thought of to say, hey, let's approach it this way because I think we can get a different connection or a different impact to what we're doing?
That's a good question, actually. That's definitely been a thought in our mind, to try and reevaluate things depending on how they feel in the near future. But I know that, like a lot of other musicians, we've just been building up more angst and more aggression and more passion during all this downtime. So I think if, whatever we do when we're ready to do it, when everybody's ready to do it, it'll just be more intense than it was before, which I think is a really good thing in our situation, because I think us as a band thrives off of energy and intensity. So I think it'll only be better, which I'm really excited for.
I'm really excited for rock music once things settle down and, get back to normal. I really think that rock is ready to explode. I think rock was ready to explode prior, because when you look at all the bands that were coming out and kind of just underneath the surface of mainstream, there were so many bands that were getting ready to punch through and, be a viable touring act, of a band that connected with the youth of today. Granted, they had to be put on pause, but I think with all the things that are happening, and you mentioned the angst, and you mentioned how, things are going to be, more intense. And I think it's a recipe for success for rock and roll, because I think rock and roll thrives on that. I think all that pent up angst in the youth of today, doing the same thing, doing the e-learning that they're doing, not really doing much. I mean, my son, said to me back in the spring, this sucks doing the same thing every day. And I think rock and roll has positioned itself to really feed off of that. Do you agree?
I completely agree. Yes, I think that's the heart soul of rock music, is being able to thrive and feed on everything that is happening right now, as far as relaying or kind of describing all of the human emotions that we're feeling or consciously choosing to not feel at this time. So I completely agree with you.
And I think, as the youth of today grows older, and connecting with that generation, I think is so important for the relevancy of rock music, because I think it's had some challenges over the last decade or so with just not being at the forefront. Rock and roll has never really been mainstream, although it's had peaks of success. But I think, with this whole COVID shutdown, doing things differently, not having live music, albums being delayed, and kids just sitting around just going, what's next? What's going to happen? Connecting with that, because I know there is a lot of young people that are ready for it. When you think about Joyous Wolf and you think about what is next once this happens, I know it's hard to have a crystal ball because it's so unknown, but what do you guys expect from yourselves once things do get back to normal?
We definitely expect to just go harder with everything that we were previously doing, to just do more of it. So we want to be doing more new material that is just going to be more intense and more exciting than our previous material, because we are growing in our own emotions. And like we just talked about, we're kind of absorbing our environment every day now. So being able to connect with other people on that level is super important with everything that's going on. But I can definitely say that we're going to be doing probably almost as much touring as we were the previous year. As soon as all of this is over, we have a lot of really good plans to release some new music and some different versions of some old music, actually. So I think all of that kind of plays into our future. And I totally understand what you were saying earlier about, rock has never been at the forefront of the biggest genre, but I think that just goes along with what's good in music right now, and also what's able to connect with people right now. Not to say that rock music hasn't been good recently, because that's absolutely not true. But I think that when it's so universal and it's put on a platform that's being able to be seen by the masses, and it's received as being something that can be internalized by the viewer, I think that it's almost like undeniable, whatever genre it may be at that point. So I have no worries whatsoever. I'm actually trying to hold in my excitement every day, just because I know the things that we kind of have planned for when that is all ready to go. So just kind of working toward that day by day while I can is basically our goal at the moment.
I am excited because I think about all these new bands, with Joyous Wolf included, and just the amount of music that's been created and what the future holds. That, as a fan of rock music and growing up, with the music that I grew up with, and plus, being immersed in the new rock scene as well, whether it's interviewing you guys or, a band that I know Nick mentioned was Of Limbo. I had a chance to talk to them, of course, and then South of Eden, and there's so many other bands to name that I just think it's there for the taking in terms of being the next great rock generation when you think about all the new bands. And I know classic rock fans have an issue with new music. A lot of classic rock fans, don't like to listen to anything past 1992. But,
right.
As a new band, you shouldn't care about the classic rock fan. Not that you not care about them, because they could be fans just like I am. But the demographic you want to hit is the younger generation, because once they're a fan of you, they grow up being a fan of you, and they stay being a fan of you. To turn a classic rock fan into listening to the same 50 songs on classic rock stations to a band like Joyous Wolf or whatever band you can think of, that's a tough mountain to climb. So, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, being in part, everyone calls it the new wave of classic rock. I don't really like that tag, because it's not classic rock, it's new wave of rock. But how do you feel about, the older generation, kind of most of it scoffing at the newer bands? Oh, new rock sucks. And then you have the new generation that, is always getting pop music thrown at them and hip hop and rap thrown at them. And, you don't even see the rock awards on the Grammys. You don't, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is telling people what rock and roll is now. It's tough, man. It's, it's a tough thing, but how do you guys feel about that?
I think we kind of got out all of our understandings and frustrations about that whole thing at the beginning of our band stage, because we've had this conversation as a band at least 1,000 times. Like, we totally understand that whole concept. Obviously it's something that we've wanted to do, appeal to the younger generation. But to be honest with you, rock music is just rock music. Like, we understand it's not at the forefront, and we don't really care. Rock music was like this only cool thing that, like, the dudes wearing leather jackets in high school liked. Like, it wasn't something that was generally accepted at the beginning that was like cool or like whatever, you liked it because it was a music that spoke to you. And I would just hope that, maybe the older generations want to give a try to newer rock music and not listen to it in the sense of, I hear this and I just hear, name any classic rock band ever, but maybe just try and sit down and see if you can have a new experience with something in a kind of unbiased way as a listener. And I would say the same for the younger generation too. I mean, listen to some older music that you've never heard of before. Like maybe someone has never heard of the band Guns N' Roses and they go and listen to it and they absolutely fall in love with the music genre, and that's their turning point. Like, I don't know. I think there's a lot of things that on both sides of generations can do better, but as like a kind of blanket statement, I would say is just give new music a try that you don't kind of have preconceived notions that you're hanging on to, because it will never matter, in our opinion, what's popular in music. Because it could be rap and hip hop now. It could be pop. It could be country in 2 months. Like, we don't really care. Like, we think that if our music is good enough, it will affect a great amount of people just by being relatable and hopefully good. And that's really all we could ever hope for.
I think the frustration for myself as a fan is when I have conversations with people and they can get on social media, they can get on Facebook, they can get on Twitter, they can get on YouTube, they can watch all these things. And then they say to me, I don't know where to find new music. And, I feel like you've made it this far getting on Facebook and Twitter and YouTube. There's that search option that every one of those social media platforms have. You've gotten this far, you can go a little further. And it's just like, I just rack my brain. Like, how do you not know where to find it? You're basically, it's at your fingertips. Google whatever, or find a platform that you're comfortable with reading and using that, exposes new music. To just say that, and I do think that there's some truth to there being too many platforms, because, it is sometimes overwhelming for someone who's, do I find them on YouTube? Do I find them on a streaming service? Do I find them on, So yeah, I do understand that. Some people think more is positive, and I sometimes believe less is more, because I think sometimes it kind of gets lost in translation. But, going back to what I was saying is, people have to want to find it. And I've always been that one fan that's always looking for something new. I love Led Zeppelin. They're my favorite band of all time. I love Van Halen. I love Rush. I love AC/DC. I love all those bands. But if I stopped listening to new music, it would get boring. It would not satisfy me. And I don't know why certain people are the way they are and certain people are more, experimental in terms of listening and keeping an open mind. But yeah, it frustrates me that people either just suddenly become ignorant in trying to find new music, or maybe they just don't want to.
Yeah, I think, talking about possibly like an older generation of people trying to find new music, it's also different, because in the past, good music was generally played on the radio. Good new music was given a chance on the radio at first listen, first play. You turn on the radio now, and it's either new pop music that you've never heard of, or it's the same, like you said, the same classic songs you've heard forever, just being played again. So there's not really a new avenue for people to easily be able to discover new music. And it's also a different process that's ever been available for people to try and find music. Like, for me personally, the best way that I usually find my new music that I want to listen to is either like a weird related video on YouTube, or it would be a related artist on Spotify. But a lot of people don't know that. A lot of people don't know how to do that. It might seem like a weird kind of rabbit hole to dig down inside of. But I agree with what you're saying. You know, if I were to just listen to old music all the time, I might get sick of music after a while. You know, it might be nostalgic for a lot of people, and maybe they still like those songs because it reminds them of certain things, and maybe that's enough for certain people. And you know what? That's okay. But for the people who understand that they want more out of it, you know, it's definitely not enough.
It's like a tale, you know, of two cities, basically. You know, you have, you know, one city that's, you know, trying to feed off new music and wants to hear it and wants to keep things fresh. And then the other city just wants to be comfortable and just wants to kind of stay in their box. I mean, it's almost even like when an artist tries to experiment with something different, you know, and stretch themselves. You know, classic rock fans like to keep their artist in their box. And they don't like it when they venture out of their box. And when they do, they have a very difficult time adapting to a new sound or a new style. But that artist has to keep evolving. You know, not everybody is AC/DC, where you can release basically the same album over and over again, and it still sounds kick-ass, and it still sounds awesome. But that's rare, though. That's not every artist. And I appreciate when an artist tries to evolve and tries to do something different and tries to keep growing. You know, like I said earlier in the conversation, hearing the growth in the song Odyssey versus the previous Place and Time EP was great to hear. I love it when a band does that. You know, I love it when you can hear that growth. And I love it when a band is just, you know, getting better and better, because I used to love that when I was younger, and I still do. I still hold on to that. But, you know, I wish everybody, you know, felt the same. But then again, I also have the feeling, too, that, okay, fine, the classic rock generation is what it is. The concentration should be on the younger fans. And I think younger fans are starting to get it. I mean, I see my 15-year-old kid, I bring him up a lot in my conversations, and his friends thriving on new rock music and listening to new rock music. I mean, he sends me his playlist all the time, and it's bands I've never even heard of. So I think it's coming. I think it's there. It's right there. And I think once this pause is turned to play in terms of the pandemic, I think it's a recipe for success for rock music. And I agree with you also that rock doesn't have to be mainstream, but I just would like to see it more recognized for what it is. And I think sometimes in terms of relevancy, it isn't.
Oh, you're definitely not wrong. No, you're 100% right. I would definitely love to see that too. It's just that I'm definitely not going to wait around for somebody to decide that rock music is relevant again.
Right.
You know, like that's not my job. My job is to make rock music, or our job is to make rock music relevant again by just being a band, not from some try-hard campaign for making this specific music popular again just for the sake of it, but just as like an after effect of it just being good music. Like I really just think that's all it takes. And yeah, like, you know, like you were just saying also, there's different avenues for younger and older generations. To be honest with you, I really don't care like if it's older or younger generation, because like our music will hopefully reach both. It's just that, to what you were saying before, there does need to be a more universal sort of platform for it. That I definitely do agree with you on, because you know, some bands do make an artistic change, and as much as you can respect them for it, like fans don't care if a band does something new or not. Like a lot of the time, like if it's good, then it's good. But if they make a change and it's still bad, like they're not going to be a fan of that band anymore, because they're like, oh yeah, they did something new, but it wasn't really that good. So I don't really know how to feel about it. A great example of that, in my opinion, was Red Hot Chili Peppers. They were like this crazy, intense, hard driving, like funk band who really didn't have any, like a lot of memorable songs back when like, the album that George Clinton produced was out. But then they made this crazy change when Frusciante got in the band, and then Blood Sugar came out and Stadium Arcadium came out, and there were a lot of fans that probably dropped from them, but oh my God, the amount that they gained from that transition was crazy. They ascended to a new level of popularity and songwriting as a band. So I just think if it's good music, it's good music. I think that will always break out any mold. It doesn't matter if your genre is popular or not, but I think that there does need to be some sort of, we're trying to say, like, more awareness on the topic in a more pop culture sort of spotlight. I think it definitely does deserve that,
What was it like touring with Deep Purple? I mean, that was basically a classic rock crowd, band that's been around for decades. What was that experience like?
As far as the reception from the fans go?
Yes.
It wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be. It wasn't as hard as we thought it was going to be. We thought that, everybody was coming to see Smoke on the Water, and everybody would show up at the last 15 minutes or whatever it was to see their biggest song or whatever you want to call it, But there is a sense of fan base with them. And, you're always going to have the people who go there to see Smoke on the Water and have a good time, relive all those memories. But there's still like a core people that go to their shows who just like rock music. And maybe they didn't expect to see a new rock band, but they definitely did. Some people were definitely open to it, and some people weren't. But I would say it was definitely still good overall, because we still had a reception with, I would say, a decent amount of people from that experience.
Well, Blake, I've really enjoyed the conversation. Appreciate you coming on. Just
oh, of course, Jake. I mean, thank you so much for having me, and thanks for all you're doing for the scene of rock music right now. It's definitely helping, and it's very appreciated.
Anytime. Thank you again very much. Once again, everybody,
Awesome.
That's Blake Allard from Joyous Wolf. I'm Jay Scott from The Hook Rocks, the ultimate rock community podcast. Take care, stay healthy, and we'll talk again soon. Thanks.
Maryland sports fans, there's only one sports book in the great state of Maryland with over 50 years experience booking bets and supporting customers. Betfred Sportsbook at Longshots is now open and is the only sportsbook in Frederick offering cash betting on football, basketball, world soccer, and more. Visit the Betfred Sportsbook at I-270 and MD-85 in Frederick, right next to Longshots off-track betting. Go to betfredsports.com for more information and your chance to win exclusive merchandise. Must be 21 or older. Play responsibly. For help, call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Jackson Hewitt handles your taxes and your stress. Inhale our no surprise price of $149 or less. Exhale, paying more for complicated taxes. You won't. Inhale new tax law knowledge. Exhale, missing out on your biggest refund? Certainly not. Don't miss paying $149 or less. Rest easy. Jackson Hewitt's got your taxes. Guaranteed. Limited time offer for new clients on federal returns. Participating locations only. Terms at jacksonhewitt.com/149.